Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scaff. He's Mike Werman. Today we're going to talk about the NFL's season finale, regular season finale, and update our ongoing, now completed betting competition for the first leg, I guess, of our, I'm going to assume, very long-running future segment. And then we'll talk a little bit about NFL coaching openings, the national championship game for college football, and then get into the division round, or the wild card round, I guess, for the playoffs in the NFL next week, this upcoming weekend. I guess we'll start with last week's NFL games. Mike, what did you find most interesting from the final week of the NFL season? Was it teams winning to hold on to their playoff spots, like the Chiefs or Eagles to clinch the 1 seeds? Was it teams near the bottom of the playoffs winning to get in, like Jacksonville winning a must-need game, or teams failing maybe that were maybe more interesting, like Green Bay dropping out of the playoffs, even though they had control of their own destiny? What did you find most intriguing from the last week of the season?
Yeah, I found actually, the teams failing to get into the playoffs, or teams that had already gotten in the playoffs who bungled their last games somehow. I think you could say Dallas did very poorly, getting trounced by a Washington team with a quarterback named Sam Howell making his first start, and Prescott in the starters. And a lot of the starters played on Dallas, and they lost 26-6. It was really bad. I think also you could say the Eagles almost blew it against a not so good Giants team that was also not even playing its best players. Like, it was Davis Webb was the third string quarterback. Saquon Barkley didn't play. A lot of the defensive guys were not in there either, and it was mostly the Eagles starters trying to with Hurts in there, trying to kind of get back on the same page that they had a few weeks ago. So that didn't turn out very well for them. The San Diego Chargers,
they did win, but it just wasn't. It wasn't necessarily.
Yeah, they won, but it was not the statement that you would want it to be. I said San Diego Chargers. It was the Los Angeles Chargers against the Broncos. This game was meaningless to them, but they decided to keep their starters in it for a while, and long enough that maybe some of their starters got injured in the most Charger fashion of all under Coach Brandon Staley. So maybe hurting them going into their playoff game against Jacksonville, where they could have really used it as a kind of a bye week to get well, especially because Jacksonville was a team that beat them so badly the first time around. But yeah, I think the most, other than the Chiefs' big victory against against Las Vegas, it was the defeat of the Green Bay Packers in dramatic fashion against the Detroit Lions, losing at home against Detroit, a team that historically is very bad. And you think Aaron Rodgers is one of the all-time great quarterbacks. He's also because it's sort of recently become one of the more annoying players in the NFL. And it was nice to see his team go down. And I think that's probably going to be Rodgers' last. I would imagine it's going to be Rodgers' last game as a Packer, given the way that ended. Did you see him walk off the field?
Yeah, it kind of seemed like maybe he saw it that way. But he's due a lot of money if he comes back next season on his own, at least anyway. He doesn't have to do anything. I mean, he just has to show up, right? I mean, he doesn't. Yeah, I think there's no contract negotiations. He's already signed a multi-year deal, and he's only a year into that, so he's got a couple of seasons left, and he's due a lot of money, $50 million, lot of money.
Yeah, I think the idea is that maybe
Green Bay would trade him. From that.
Yeah, it's like, well, he's 2 years left on his contract, so maybe some team would say, well, $50 million a year is a lot. That seems to be the going rate for a good quarterback now. And you're paying Kyler Murray almost that much, and Mahomes is making close to that. Josh
Will be.
Josh
Yeah.
Allen, same thing. Yeah, that's what you pay for a high price quarterback.
Right.
And yeah, you'd think maybe one of those. There's a lot of quarterback needy teams out there, so maybe they'll make a trade for Rodgers if it seems that Rodgers is kind of worn out his welcome in Green Bay in a lot of ways. So
Mm.
I could see him getting traded. I don't. It's possible to retire, and I guess it's also possible to come back. So I don't really know what's going to happen. But I just had the feeling it seems like that might be his last game, and it's kind of funny the way it ended. Like they shouldn't have even been close to the playoffs. They were just in a bad conference and won a few games kind of luckily, and they were just a bad team.
They had dug themselves such a hole. They needed to win.
Yeah.
Basically the last 6 games of the season, and they nearly did it.
They nearly did. Yeah, they got it handed to them almost, but they still couldn't do it, which was so they made it. It's one of the, it hurts more when you almost do it rather than when you just so like that. So it was kind of sweet to me to see that happen.
Well, and to a team that already knew that they had been eliminated from playoff contention, because the timing of the games was such that Seattle had already won and would have finished ahead of Detroit, regardless of the outcome of the Detroit Green Bay game. So really the only thing Detroit was playing for was the spite, defeat of keeping Green Bay out of the playoffs, seemingly.
Yeah. Looking back, you think the NFL didn't make the right pick on which game to put at the end. I was thinking just now, probably the game they should have put on Sunday night as their primetime final game should have been Buffalo hosting New England, because it was a huge game for Buffalo coming back. And then in New England, if they won, they were going to make the playoffs no matter what happened elsewhere. So I think that would have been the most. But they did that before the Hamlin situation happened, but that would have been that would have probably been the game to do, because I think the debate was, what are they going to do, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and nobody outside those are two of the probably least bottom 5 teams in popularity nationwide, I would guess.
But it is deciding a division.
It is a deciding game. Yeah.
Importance level should be fairly high.
Yeah, the importance level was high, but yeah, that's like yeah, I would say that a lot of those Southern NFL teams are, because college football is so big down there, the NFL isn't as popular, and most of those teams, they don't tend to have the stars that they don't compete as, like the AFC South is has been bad most of the time. The NFC South bad most of the time. New Orleans is okay sometimes, and Atlanta every once in a while, and Tampa with Brady. But it's one of those things where most of those, those teams down there, nobody there aren't huge. There's no nationwide appeal to a lot of those teams, because there's a lot of expansion teams in those conferences, or like the Titans, they moved from Houston, and there's a Houston expansion, there's Carolina expansion, there's Jacksonville expansion. They didn't have time to build up fan bases really, and a lot of those people in those areas probably have other teams they followed already, and I wonder. It seems kind of interesting how, like, the NFL wants this competitive kind of balance, but the divisions are very unbalanced.
Which ends up being that the schedule ends up being quite unbalanced then too. Certain teams have much more difficult schedules than others do. I mean, they want that to happen where the top teams play other top teams, so you can really tell which top team is actually deserving of that their record, at least anyway, especially when it comes to the playoffs. But when the top teams from some divisions are not very good in comparison to the other divisions, it does kind of lessen that a bit.
I think part of that comes about in the NFC a little bit, because Dallas plays in the NFC East for no reason other than Dallas wants to be in those big media markets to play those big media teams that they've played historically. So like, Dallas and New York and Philadelphia and Washington are all together.
Yeah.
And
It
like,
was, I think it was mostly just to maintain rivalries
yeah, and it's strange that Dallas
despite
was in
the regional difference.
and I think Dallas had long protested against moving to a Western division or South division, even well before the 4 division format. And I think because they wanted the East Coast primetime games rather than the West Coast ones. And like it's the NFC East should be probably Carolina, Washington, Philadelphia, and the Giants, and then the South would be Dallas, New Orleans, Atlanta,
Tampa.
Tampa.
Yeah. This Dallas doesn't have any rivalry with those teams, I guess, right? I mean, you would build a rivalry. They weren't interested in building new rivalries. They just wanted to maintain their old ones.
Yeah,
and they're more historic division, I guess.
Well, like Seattle got bumped from the AFC West to the NFC West. I guess you could say Kansas City is not that Western compared to most of the other
it is
teams.
west of the Mississippi.
I guess when St. Louis was still, I think, NFC West, because they were in Los Angeles, right? And then they moved.
Yeah.
St. Louis, and they stayed in the West, and they moved back to Los Angeles. So I guess that worked out for them. But having Dallas like dictate where they wanted to be, it seems it's interesting because the NFC is, and the AFC is like that too, where it's the South again. That's not. You'd think that having a team in Houston, maybe because Texas loves football, and you think Houston should be good. I guess under Watson they were for a brief moment, but it's interesting how some of those like big market teams do so poorly year in and year out.
Yeah,
because Atlanta is one of the biggest cities in the country, metro area, and they do. Yeah, they haven't had a good team. And when was Atlanta's? I guess they had Super Bowl. When they lost the Super Bowl, they haven't been the same since Matt Ryan. And the Falcons collapsed like 6-7 years ago in the Super Bowl. So I don't know if they've even made the playoffs.
But they have the college football champs in the state of Georgia, so they're good, I guess, for now.
Yeah, that's true. Do we before we talk about do we want to get the college national championship out of the way?
Let's just get it out of the way. Not an entertaining game at all.
Was there anything to take away from that?
Georgia is much better than TCU. I think is that mostly it.
I didn't think TCU would be that bad. I don't know what happened. And they played a competitive game against Michigan. I don't think Michigan was 4 touchdowns plus worse than Georgia. Ohio State played Georgia very close. So like I don't know what happened. It just seemed like they just didn't care after
they got to the final, and that was the important thing. But
it was just so weird and bizarre. And it makes I think it made the Big 12 kind of look embarrassed. Like if TCU had just lost by 1 point or something to Michigan, a really close game, and said, "Oh, that was a great game," and then Michigan played Georgia, I think TCU would look a lot better had they actually lost the first game rather than making it to the final and just losing some.
As long as they didn't get blown out in that first game, right?
Yeah. It's like if they had lost by the same score that they won by.
Yeah.
And it was a close game. I think it would have been okay. But like losing, it's like hard to say. Like when you win that first game, you think, okay, finally people are going to respect us. We'll be at worst the number 2 team in the country, but they lost by 58. Do you know where TCU ended up being ranked?
In the last poll? I mean, they were 3rd, I think, before the playoff.
Yeah, like after the Bulls.
Oh, I mean, I assume they finished 2nd, but I didn't see it. Did they fall more than that? Because they gave up 65 points in the final?
Yeah, somehow they were 2nd. Yeah.
I
And
think they'd
somehow,
have to stay second. I don't know how they could really
yeah,
justify doing
Michigan
otherwise.
was third, Ohio State fourth, Alabama fifth. They stayed basically where they were.
Yeah,
Tennessee, Penn State, Washington 8, Tulane 9, Utah 10. Um,
yeah. I don't know. I've long ranted against the way the Big 12 handles most of the things that they do. They did not do any favors to TCU and getting them prepared for a national championship game the way they officiated the Big 12 championship game. Um, they
it
do the
turns out it
same thing
didn't
in
matter.
basketball too, where they seem like they try to build up a team, almost always Kansas, and they usually don't perform very well typically in the tournament.
Well, this last
Uh,
year, KU was
they
one, of
did
course.
fine that year, but in the
And I
past they
guess
have lost relatively early when they've gotten high seeds that they didn't deserve because they get such beneficial treatment in the conference play and in the tournament play. It's just absolutely absurd.
I like I
I
like your I
am
like
not
hearing
a
your
fan of the way the Big 12 runs the conference.
I like
I like a
hearing
lot of the schools that are in it. I think it's run very poorly.
it. You dislike Kansas profusely, which I enjoy your hatred of um,
They,
the Jayhawks.
if they have as many violations as the NCAA claims that they have, it's enough to receive the death penalty for college basketball. Because the schools have gotten more, fewer level 1 violations and had their programs removed than Kansas has in recent time. But they won't do anything about it because it makes them too much money, so they'll never do anything.
Kansas. I I have a like Kansas has the best library uh, of the local Kansas City area teams. It's better than Mizzou's library. It was better than
Yeah.
um, Nebraska and some other places. So I like their library because it helped me finish my dissertation. And I taught for a semester there. So I've become more of a KU fan than I ever was.
Gross.
So I would say of the local teams, um, my parents were K-State people, so they like K-State. But I've like I used to be Missouri, all Missouri, but since they moved to the SEC and stuff like that, I don't I don't follow Missouri at all because my SEC team is Arkansas, and so I really dislike uh,
Yeah.
Mizzou in all sports now. So it's yeah. So I've yeah I like I don't mind Kansas, but it they're the one team that because like it's hard. They're the one basketball power that's a regular basketball power in the Big 12, other than Baylor, and it's tough to root for
Yeah.
Baylor. Uh,
It's artificial though. At
yeah,
least a significant percentage of their success is is artificial.
I think you can say that for a lot of the top basketball teams, though. The way like
Yeah.
Duke is was constantly gifted with calls and seedings, and I think Kentucky and teams like that too. That there
Yeah.
are, I think there are those kind of princely teams that yeah, it's yeah. I don't know if college basketball is becoming. I haven't paid as much attention to college basketball in the last 5-10 years as I did when I was younger. So I'm not up on it all. I'm at Penn State. Penn State doesn't have a very good basketball team usually, so I think they've. I'm gonna see when their last NCAA tournament was. I think it was a long time ago.
When what happened?
The last time Penn State was in the NCAA tournament. Oh, they made it in 2011 was the last time the Penn State men's basketball team has been. That's a long time for basketball because like so many teams make the tournament. You have like one good year.
Well,
So you
especially
kind of
for a school that size, because it is an enormous school. They have a lot of students.
yeah.
Think just on ratio that they'd have enough basketball talent if they just drew from walk-ons to like put a relatively competitive team
Yeah,
together.
and the last time before 2011, they made it in 2001. So they've only made it
Twice in
twice
23 years.
twice in the 21st century.
Wow.
Yeah, even like Nebraska, I think is.
And they've been struggling a lot with their sports, their athletics.
Yeah, since they moved to the Big Ten, especially. Well, I guess Nebraska's a little bit worse. They made it in 2014, and before that, it was 1998.
So
Interesting.
what you're saying is there only one appearance in the tournament behind Penn State in the 21st century.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, Nebraska in 1998 lost to Arkansas in the first round, and Penn State, when they played in 1996, their last tournament of the 20th century that they made it in, they also lost to Arkansas in the first round.
Well, that's good.
So, but
Oh,
I vaguely remember that Arkansas Penn State. I mean, Arkansas Nebraska.
well, I think
Anyway.
maybe we should yeah, bail on the end
Bail on the
part of
college
the discussion on this on the NCAA, because it's it wasn't really worth talking about very much.
We can talk. Maybe we can talk about college basketball in coming weeks, since the March Madness is only a couple of months away now.
Yeah,
And there are always interesting things. Iowa State has a good team this year.
they're off to a good start in conference play. Yeah,
Yeah, Arkansas is doing pretty well this year
play.
as well. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe jumping right back into last week's NFL games. What did you think of the snow globe play from the Chiefs?
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool play. It was better than a lot of the Chiefs' trick plays because it involved Mahomes, and it involved him as a passer rather than like some decoy wide receiver person that wasn't going to catch the ball. So it almost didn't work because Tony almost got tackled in the backfield, but he's slippery enough to get away and sort of touchdown. And it's a disappointment that there was that kind of phantom holding called on. Who was it called on? It wasn't Tooney. It was Humphrey. It was Humphrey who got the penalty call.
Center.
Yeah, and he just pushed this guy down. It wasn't much of a hold at all. It wasn't even a hold. Then they scored the next play, so it didn't really matter. But it would have been nice that had that play actually counted rather than the next Tony end around. So it was. What did you think of that play, and what did you think of the game in general?
I think the play was a lot of fun. I really enjoy seeing the players come together to come up with these like somewhat bizarre plays. Especially that one was interesting. I just like the way that they rolled out of the huddle into their positions that weren't standard anyway. So like the Raiders had to be paying attention to see even where anybody was even lined up, because it was Mahomes was not under center. He was in a running back position, with McKinnon under center, I think, or behind center, I guess, not under.
Yeah, they did it almost seamlessly. So it was like when they did it right, they stopped in the right spot, and they just, it was like they didn't have stumble across each other. It was
right.
They just spread the right.
Rolled right into their correct spots.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
Very well coordinated. It was choreographed. Yeah. I guess is probably more appropriate term.
Reminds us a little bit of that Super Bowl play where they did that weird kind of all the people in the backfield did that weird kind of spin move, Jackson 5 kind of move before.
Right.
That was from the 1948 Rose Bowl or something.
Right.
And I saw some sort of precursors to this play, but none of them looked like that.
Yeah.
These kind of weird huddles where they, I saw some weird huddles where they break out quickly and they kind of spread, but I haven't seen that spin anywhere else. But yeah, that was really cool, and it was nice to see the Chiefs win a game without sweating it, and without injuries, and without just almost losing to a lesser team, which seems like what almost happens every week.
Right. Not another over officiated game too, because
other than that one play, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, typically the Raiders draw a lot of flags historically. And I don't think there were that many penalties called. I think in the game
There were a couple of
there were only 11 penalties combined in the
it
game.
wasn't so bad.
So
It wasn't a Carl Shepard's game, at least.
right. And the Chiefs won the turnover battle, which is another nice sign to like see them at least stepping into the playoffs. They're not quite so negative anyway for the defensive takeaway.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, Jones had a big game. Mahomes had another magical sort of short goal line touchdown pass to McKinnon, who's really turned it on the second half of the season. He has 9 touchdown receptions. I think that actually ties an NFL record for a running back.
I think he already had a record for like consecutive games with a receiving touchdown. Was that it?
He had 6 in a row, which is also a record. It's not it's a record in the Super Bowl era, they said.
Okay.
Because the most touchdowns in a season by a running back was 11 in 1931. And do you know who did it? Any guesses? It's nobody you'll ever heard of.
The Galloping Ghost.
It wasn't Red Grange. That's a good guess. It wasn't Bronco Nagurski or somebody like that either. It was, but it's got almost as interesting and cool of a name as nickname as his. His name was Johnny Blood McNally. His nickname was Blood.
Blood.
And
do we want to know what the origin of this nickname is?
We're looking it up right now. He was part of the NFL 1930s all-decade team, so it's really sad that you haven't heard of him, Andrew. He played for 6 different teams between 1925 and 41. He actually his career ended because of World War II, and he actually tried to make a comeback in 1945 after the war, but he was already 42 years old, so he didn't. He went to Notre Dame, and he played so let's see how many of these teams that you've heard of. He played for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams, I believe. Yeah, 6 different teams. 2 stints with 2 of the same teams. So 6 different ones and eight stints total. So his first team was the Milwaukee Badgers.
Oh, of course.
1925, 1926. Then the Duluth Eskimos, 26 to 27. The Pottsville Maroons. Do you know where Pottsville is?
No.
It's in Pennsylvania. That's where.
Seems surprising that there would be enough population to support a team in a town that isn't very big.
It's not very big, but the Yingling Brewery is in Pottsville, if you've heard of Yingling.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in Pottsville. That's the only thing I know really about Pottsville. It's kind of mining kind of eastern Pennsylvania between Scranton and Philadelphia. The Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
Yeah, he played for the Packers for 7 seasons, the most famous team. The Pittsburgh Pirates, who later became the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did you know that the Pirates were the Steelers were once known as the Pirates? Which I guess is why they are also black and yellow as a color. That's my guess. So yeah, they joined the NFL in 1933. Yeah, owned by Art Rooney. Took its name from the baseball team of the same name, as was common practice for NFL teams at the time. You know, you had the St. Louis Cardinals, you had the New York Giants, some of those other teams. Yeah, the Pirates, and then.
Did you see his nickname though too? Did you notice that?
Johnny Blood.
Well, are you in Pro Football Reference or?
I'm on Wikipedia. Where do you get the name Blood?
Oh, it just says it has a nickname for him separate from that of the vagabond halfback.
Oh, the Vagabond. We did play for all those different teams.
Yeah,
So
he's actually
his
listed in Pro Football Reference as Johnny Blood.
Johnny Blood. Then he played for the Pirates, the Packers, the Pirates, and then the Buffalo Tigers were his last team. Apparently, he was so while working for a newspaper in Minneapolis, he and a friend, Ralph Hansen, heard they could make extra money by playing football for a semi-pro football team. They decided to try out under fake names, which would protect McNally's amateur standing in case Notre Dame agreed to take McNally back someday after he was kicked out. He was kicked out of Notre Dame for some reason. So he played football at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, Catholic school. They transferred to Notre Dame, but he never actually played for Notre Dame.
Really?
He was kicked out of school for some reason. I guess because he was a punk. And so, yeah, he and one of his friends were trying to take fake names, and they drove by a movie theater that was playing a 1922 movie called Blood and Sand by with Rudolph Valentino as the star. And Johnny McNally was blood and his friend became sand. And that was the source of it. But yeah, he has so not only did he have a record for touchdown receptions by a running back in a season of 11, he also has a record for touchdown receptions in a career, which was surprising to me by a running back. 37, ahead of Marshall Faulk. 36, which I thought was really surprising.
Interesting.
I would have guessed Priest Holmes or somebody would have had a lot.
Yeah.
Eckler has 29, so he might pass him at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Darren Sproles had only 32, Keith Byers 31. Alvin Kamara 22, McCaffrey 22. So maybe they will at some point. But how many touchdowns receiving does Jared McKinnon have in his career?
No clue. I mean, at least 9.
Yeah.
That's where he is right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
For this season?
He has 16 in his career. He's never had more than 2 receiving touchdowns in a career in a year before this year, which is also surprising, I think.
Yeah, he's turned into quite a especially a fantasy running back then because of the receiving touchdowns. That certainly helps pad those stats.
Yeah, he has 512 yards, 56 receptions, 9 touchdowns. And yeah, it's pretty good.
Should we go through our picks from this week?
Yeah, let's go to our picks. We've had a lot of tangents here. I think Johnny Blood McNally was
unexpected.
Unexpected, yeah. You never know when Johnny Blood will make an appearance, I guess.
Well, now he's going to come up more often.
Blood,
the vagabond halfback.
The vagabond halfback. He was also the coach of the Pittsburgh Pirates for 3 seasons.
I did notice that he died one day after his 82nd birthday, apparently too.
Palm Springs, so he must have retired pretty well.
Yeah, I guess so.
He was one of the 17 inaugural members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which included Jim Thorpe, Sammy Baugh, Curly Lambeau, Bronco Nagurski. So yeah, he was highly regarded in his day, but I guess he just become forgotten. I guess maybe some old timers might remember Johnny Blood, but I had never heard of him. So I think I know football fairly well. So it's well enough.
Well, with a name like Johnny Blood, you'd think there would be more talk about him even now, right?
Yeah.
No, barely.
There's a section on in the Wikipedia article called "Legendary Antics of Johnny Blood."
Really?
Yeah.
There can't be
Um,
that many people that have a legendary antics section.
yeah, so apparently he jumped across um, a narrow ledge 6 stories above the ground to get into a hotel room. He jumped on top of a fast moving train uh, to flee a towel fight with a teammate, I guess.
Wow.
Um, he played an entire game with a collapsed kidney. I didn't know your kidneys could collapse.
Wow.
um, he was just doing strange. Yeah, he passed up on an opportunity to purchase an NFL franchise for $1,200. You could have bought an NFL team for $1,200.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, he had a bet with a boxer um, that said he'll be he and this boxer friend of his made a bet on the winner whoever lived the longest would receive $1,000 and Johnny Blood lived 6 years longer than his friend Augie Ratner. um, and he goes, the one who goes first loses $1,000 to the one who survives. The loser won't miss the money, and it will console the winner for the loss of a friend. May I live a long time and you forever. Oh, it's actually kind of nice. But
Wow. Passing up buying a franchise seems surprising though, doesn't it?
yeah, he was in World War II in India as a code breaker. This guy is like the most interesting man in the world, I think. He went back to school and at the age of 50 at the University of Minnesota, and he earned a master's degree in economics.
Wow.
Yeah, Johnny Blood. He ran for sheriff one time. Somehow they didn't. He didn't win. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. This is yeah. So I'm sorry. We went back to Johnny Blood. Johnny Blood would have been proud of maybe of our results this week, or maybe not ashamed of our results this week because we both finished at 500. We made an extra bet to make up for our missing or bet that never came to fruition. The each of us had bet on some aspect of the Bills Bengals game that ended, of course, when Lamar Hamlin got hurt. But we made 4 bets. Do you want to talk about your first one? You want to talk? Let's go losses first, then wins. I think that is how we usually like to do
Sure.
it.
Sure. Yeah, so my first loss was I had the over the Tennessee Jacksonville game. Jacksonville didn't ever quite get going on offense, but did win the game late on a fumble recovery that was somewhat questionable, at least a little bit controversial. Um,
Yeah, I think it could have
they,
easily been
they
a forward pass. Yeah,
they did, but yeah, the officials talked about it and decided that it was a fumble. Jacksonville ended up winning the game, but they did not cover the 40-point line. It ended at 36 points, so I did not
just
manage
barely.
to win that bet.
Yeah, Tennessee's offense has been suspect the last several weeks. They
Yeah.
might be one of the teams in line for Aaron Rodgers' services if he ever decides to, or if the Packers decide to trade him. But
Mm.
they've been kind of one of those teams where they can't quite get over the hump. Tannehill had them playing pretty well a couple of years ago. They made the AFC Championship game. They were the number 1 seed last year. So like they were this year they couldn't quite summon that magic when Tannehill went down. But so the Titans ended up finishing 8-9, the Jaguars 9-8, and in the playoffs, which ensured that uh, which ensured that no losing team in the AFC made the playoffs. Um,
Right.
because that could have happened had Jacksonville lost last week. They still could have won and finished 8 and, or Tennessee even lost. I think there were ways for 8 and 9 teams to make the playoffs still.
Sneak in, yes, yeah.
Like they did in the NFC South. Speaking of, I guess we'll stick with the AFC South. I had an over under as well with an AFC South game. The battle for which was the worst team of 2023. Chicago was at least of the AFC teams. The Texans versus the Colts. Their over under was 38, and I thought, okay, I'll take the under. I have no idea who's playing quarterback. I don't think either team really wants to win the game, although it turned out it seemed like both teams really wanted to win the game. And Lovie Smith's team ended up pulling it out 32-31. I think he knew he was going to get fired, and
Yeah.
he wanted to stick it to management. And the win moved the Texans to 3-13-1 on the season, pushing them into the second draft pick position. And the Bears lost. We'll talk about your Bears game as one of your wins, but they were 3-14. So they fired Smith for losing, or we're going to fire him anyway. That's 2 consecutive one-year coaches now that the Texans have had, which.
So in fact, they actually fired him for winning, which was
yeah, and I think they're going to fire him anyway. That's my guess. Because I think they want is it Cademan? I think they want Cade McNown as the coach.
Yeah, that's what they've talked about, and it seems like that.
No, Josh McCown, not Cade, not
the different
not Cade McNown. They were 2 interchangeable mediocre quarterbacks who had the same basic name. Yeah, Josh McCown. Yeah. You know the difference between Josh McCown and Cade McNown?
You're probably going to tell me that. I'm going to still doubt it after you tell me. No.
All right. I'll give you a biography. You guess which one is which. So
I always thought they were the same person. So
okay.
I don't think you're going to convince me that they're different people now.
Okay. One of them is 43 years old, and one is 45. Do you know which one is older, Cade McNown or Josh McCown?
I'm going to say Cade is older.
He is, correct. One of them was a first-round draft pick, while the other one was a third-round draft pick. Which one was a first-round draft pick?
That must have been Josh.
It's Cade again.
Cade McNown again. Wow.
Drafted in the first round out of UCLA in 1999 by the Chicago Bears. One of them played approximately 18 seasons in the NFL. The other one played only 4 seasons in the NFL. Which one played more seasons?
I remember Josh being around longer. I could be wrong.
You're right.
I think Josh was around longer.
Josh.
Okay.
So even though Cade was the first round draft pick, Josh was the one who ended up having. Josh was a third round draft pick out of Sam Houston State. He played for SMU briefly too.
Did you say he had the more storied career then? But maybe it still wasn't necessarily it wasn't an epic. It was just a relatively short book.
Yeah, Josh passed for over 17,000 yards, 98 touchdown passes, 62 interceptions. Cade McNown only just over 3,000 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 19 picks. So Josh had a better a better career by a long shot. But yeah, I still get Cade McNown, and there's also a Cody McNown or McCown.
There was another similarly named player. So I mean, is Josh McNown, and is he coaching already, or?
I think Josh McCown was coaching high school or something.
So he has the same resume as Jeff Saturday.
Yeah, basically. He was a volunteer quarterbacks coach in North Carolina, assistant coach in Texas, where his sons play. Apparently, when he played for the Eagles in 2019, the Eagles allowed him to go in to go to those high school quarterback games. Yeah, he was. Yeah, it's just bizarre. Yeah, he. Yeah. So anyway, what we're I think so we were talking about the Texans Colts. I think, and we're really going off the rails here today. After our most efficient week last week, where we got in a lean 44 minutes, I think this time
Yeah,
we're not going to match that.
we're
And
probably already over that, and we haven't talked about it in half our stuff yet. Yeah.
so yeah, Texans Colts. It was supposed to be under 38. It ended up being well over 63, 32-31, and yeah, I think it marked the last day for sure of Lovie Smith, probably the last day as well of Jeff Saturday. We'll talk about maybe coaching vacancies in a little bit, but anything else you wanted to add to the excitement that was Texans Colts?
Didn't
It
watch
was an
it.
exciting game.
Didn't watch it. Don't care.
The Texans were down by 7 at the very end, and they scored a touchdown, and they went for the 2-point conversion to win it.
Right.
To lose the draft pick that way. They got the
That's pretty
touchdown and the
hilarious.
2-point conversion, which was really impressive. And kind of ironically, Lovie Smith ended up, he was a longtime coach of the Chicago Bears. He ended up winning the Bears the first overall
That's
draft
right.
pick. So he's a hero at an almost Ditka-esque level in Chicago.
He should be considered that way, right? Yeah. What was your second loss then?
Second loss was one that we alluded to a little bit ago. The Bills playing their first game back from the Hamlin injury. They were playing the Patriots at home. The Patriots were a 7-point underdog. I took the Patriots at +7. The Patriots, if they had won that game, they would have gone to the playoffs at 9-8. They controlled their own destiny, but they lost 35-23. However, the game was closer than the score indicated, and the game turned basically on 2 kickoff return touchdowns, not one but 2 kickoff return touchdowns by Nyheim Hines, one for 96 yards and one for 101 yards, and that made all the difference. And so had he just had one of those kickoff return touchdowns, I would have covered, but he had to have 2 kickoff returns to
just had to do it.
So thanks, Mr. Hines.
So is he on your list now?
He is, yeah, especially because he's one of the Bills. So, and he was a former Indianapolis Colt for a very long time.
That's right.
Also, he was rumored to go to the Chiefs for a while when he was buried on the Colts depth chart, but I think the Chiefs ended up not needing him because they had Jerick McKinnon, who's kind of the same player.
Mm-hmm. And then Ronald Jones ended up playing a little bit for the Chiefs too, and he ended up with a touchdown rush in this most recent game, which is nice to see getting involved a little bit more. I'm sure he's happy with that. And
the Chiefs also, I don't even remember, they have Melvin Gordon on the practice squad. So it's possible if there's another running back injury, if Edwards-Helaire isn't able to come back, we might see Melvin Gordon as the next.
That'd be a little surprising to see
him as a Chief. Yeah, he's played for. I guess this would be his 3rd AFC West team.
Right.
He doesn't fumble it. He's a very good running back, but that's a big if.
Right.
How about your second loss?
So my second loss was a game that we both picked in with different picks. Turned out to be a very surprising game anyway, with the Dallas and Washington. And the Cowboys laid a gigantic egg in this one. I had Dallas -7. They didn't come anywhere close to this, losing 26-6 in Washington.
Yeah, you think Washington is starting the quarterback Sam Howell, making his first ever start. I'd forgotten he was from North Carolina, the University of North Carolina. He was a 5th-round draft pick, and he
North Carolina known as being a big quarterback producing school.
they did produce Mitch Trubisky a couple of years ago, and he was the hot prospect. He was the first quarterback taken in the 2017 NFL draft.
He's universally loved amongst all NFL football fans. Does that sound right?
I believe so. Well, he was, he's Mitchell Trubisky or Mitch Trubisky. He was, I don't know. Again, it was one of those things where anybody who was not a football person would have questioned that pick of Mitch Trubisky. He didn't have much experience as a starter. North Carolina, he was all projections and it just seemed bad from the beginning. Looking at stats and stuff like that, even it's just but anyway,
he wasn't helped out by game
Chicago
plans and
he wasn't
offensive coordinators and and such.
No.
Head coaches done no favors.
Yeah, he didn't. He had he wasn't apparently he wasn't a very quick study or some. I think I think the rap on him was that if things went according to plan, like the plays and stuff,
yeah,
he did very, very, very well. But if he faced any sort of adversity at all, he kind of crumbled, and that was the problem for Mitch or Mitchell. I don't remember if he does he. But anyway, Sam Howell defeated the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, and so they won 26-6. Your -7 wasn't anywhere close. Fortunately, though, my under of 41 did come through in that game, so I won that one through only 32 points scored total. I thought maybe the game might be something like 26-6, but I never would have guessed that Dallas would be the one with 6 instead of.
That would be the other way around.
Yeah.
So that game went like completely opposite from what I would have expected. My guess would have been Dallas would have blown out Washington, trying to make a statement going into the playoffs because they still had a chance at the 1 seed even.
Yeah, they did, especially because because the Eagles weren't pulling away from the Giants. And it's also interesting, after the game, one team fired its offensive coordinator, and it wasn't Dallas. Washington fired their offensive coordinator, Scott Turner. We talked about nepotism in the NFL and how rampant it is. And Scott Turner, of course, is the son of Norv Turner. Do you know
legacy coaches? It's your favorite.
Legacy coaches. Do you know what Norv is short for?
Oh, is it like Norval?
It is Norval.
That's right.
Norval.
Yeah,
Norval Turner. He was the head coach of Washington, of the Chargers, and also the Raiders for stints. Also offensive coordinator a lot of places. He was famous for being offensive coordinator at Dallas when Dallas was winning their early Super Bowls in the early 90s. And I don't remember Dallas having a wonderful offense. They had a pretty good offense, but they had Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin, so it's kind of hard to not have a good team. Jay Novacek and Alvin Hart. It's hard not to have a good team with that talent. I never thought of those Dallas Cowboys teams as kind of out Xing and owing anybody. It's just they recruited. It's like when they drafted good players, and they when Jimmy Johnson was in college, he recruited good players at the University of Miami. That's how you win in college. It's just by recruiting better players than your opponents, and I think that's what Dallas ended up getting, is better players than their opponents. I don't remember any kind of real dynamic sort of playmaking and stuff, but Norv became a pretty well-traveled offensive coordinator. His teams had some success, but never enough. And His son Scott, though, was unable to survive the axe in Washington, which I think was probably done because Ron Rivera's job is pretty precarious right now, given the fact that he did not know that his team could be eliminated from the playoffs last week when they lost.
Crazy.
Any other comments on Dallas?
Oh man, I just don't know what to expect from them at all now. Like you think you kind of have it figured out, and then this type of game happens, and now I really don't know how to pick around those games coming up too. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what they do. My expectations for them have cratered though after that game. Like I kind of thought they were gonna be really maybe they'd be like kind of a wild card. Come out of that wild card round as being like a potential to upset maybe anybody in the NFC, and now I don't know if they're going to survive the first game. So it's very weird.
Yeah,
just to have a confidence crushed that fast in a team.
Yeah, Prescott had 128 yards passing on 37 attempts, or a 3.5 average per attempt. Pretty low. Yeah, and it's like all the starters played. Zeke Elliott played. Tony Pollard played. All the receivers, everybody played, and they still did nothing. It was one of the more baffling results of the season, and yeah, like you said, it doesn't seem to be a good omen for the playoffs for them. But you never know what's going to happen. But so yeah, Dallas. I was one I got under 41. What was your first victory of the?
It's my first victory. So I had a bet on the Bengals -7 against Baltimore. Lamar Jackson still out, and their backup quarterback was also out. So Anthony Brown was starting for Baltimore.
Yes, somebody named Anthony Brown was starting.
I didn't even know that was. And apparently, Sammy Watkins has moved to Baltimore now.
So they have Demarcus Robinson and Sammy Watkins on their roster.
Yeah.
Their receiving core is becoming they just need Byron Pringle and some of the
right. Oh, they have the former
Chris Conley maybe
tight end Charlie Kolar is there
Iowa State tight end,
so those three guys, Watkins, Kolar, and Robinson had 8 catches though for Baltimore. But Cincinnati got out to an early lead and held on for the game, 27-16, easily covering the 7-point spread in that one. So it was bringing me nearly back to level on the season then with my net at 1-2 at this point. Yeah.
So
you had an ugly game as your final pick, is that right?
It was ugly. There were only the highest scoring plays of the game were field goals, and there were 5 field goals and 1 safety in that game. Fortunately, 3 of the field goals and the safety were all scored by the Miami Dolphins. They won 11-6. I had the Dolphins -2. I thought the Jets. I didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. It turned out to be Joe Flacco. They didn't have anything really to play for. They were out of the playoffs. The Dolphins desperately wanted to finish 9-8 rather than 8-9 after they finished 8-3. So I think both of those teams coming in had lost at least 5 straight games, and it was not a pretty game. I think Skylar Thompson played for the Dolphins. It was a battle of like third string quarterbacks, and somehow, it was 9-6 late, and then they got a late safety, taking 11-6 to really seal the deal for me. So I was pleased, especially after the other results weren't seeming to go my way. So if I finished 2-2 on the week, and you had another win, your fourth win was also it allowed you to finish 500 this week. What was your second?
Well, just real quick though, the line apparently in that Miami game did move to -4 was the final line. Ooh. And so they actually needed that safety to cover.
I bet it at the right time. It gave me some cushion. I didn't. I saw the line was going to move. I was surprised that Miami was only favored by 2, because you know,
They
Jets
should be a lot better than the Jets on
yeah,
paper.
yeah. So
But
that
yeah,
was
but the field goal and safety to finish the game, it were in the final 18 seconds of the fourth quarter. So that
they're
was
really
covered, and then added a little cushion too. So
yeah
that's pretty funny. But 11-6, that's got to be one of those more rare, one of
origamis.
the more rare scores
Yeah,
that I have. Yeah, do you have?
I'm gonna look up the scoregami. See the 11-6.
Yeah, how often has that happened? It cannot be very often that that's happened.
It's gotta be a better. I've seen 11-6 game. There has been, I guess there has been 11-6. I'm trying to see what the.
I mean, I'm sure it's happened before, but because there are multiple ways to get to 11. But
Yeah, probably a lot of old football. It's only the second. It's only the second 11-6 game.
really,
I'm surprised because I would have guessed probably some early
yeah.
NFL games.
Or a touchdown with a 2-point conversion and then a field goal gets you to 11 also. But
Yeah,
like, there's more than one way to get to 11. It's not just that one way. It could have been 4 safeties and a field goal, but that's not what happened. But
yeah. It also could have been a touchdown, no extra point.
right.
Oh wait, here. Uh, I don't know. I found a better website for it at one point, and I can't seem to find it this time. But all games.
What is the term for that? It's a
It's called a scoregami.
scorecam.
Oh, here it is. It's on Pro Football Reference. There's his own website called Scoregami, but there's a Pro Football website that says all game scores in pro football history.
Yeah.
And there have been it says there have been two 11-6 scores. The last one, so this is only the second ever. And more, wow, this is really interesting. And I kind of remember this game. The other 11-6 score was not an old timey game. It was in the year 2000. It was January of 2000. It was the St. Louis Rams defeating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that was the Rams' greatest show on turf, going to win their Super Bowl that year. They're good for a meal, but yeah, they won a close, low-scoring game, 11-6 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it also all field goals plus 1 safety?
Let's see the box score. It was no, maybe. Let's see. No, there was a safety. So the Buccaneers scored 2 field goals for 6. The Rams scored a field goal in the first quarter and a safety in the second quarter. One of the Buccaneers, a snap went out of the end zone, so probably on a punt or something. And so it was 5-3 at halftime. Then in the fourth quarter, Martin Gramatica kicked a field goal to put the Buccaneers up 6-5.
Yes.
As towards the end of the game, Kurt Warner threw a touchdown pass to Ricky Prohl to make it 11-6, and then they went for 2 and they didn't make the 2.
Okay.
So they won 11-6 instead of 13-6. The over/under for that game was 46, and the line was Rams -14 in an NFC Championship game. -14. That's how good those Rams were thought to be. That's surprising.
They ended up winning the game with defense, essentially.
Yeah, 11-6, and they ended up beating the Titans in the Super Bowl that year.
Yeah.
So it was on Pro Football Reference, it says the Dolphins Jets game. They say it ended at -3.5. So the safety did cause, for many people, the cover for the Dolphins. Yeah, so it was, and the over under was only 37. Still, it was well under.
Great.
One of the strange games. Well, so yeah, do we want to move on to your 2 point?
Yeah. So
Your
our
second bet.
final game of the season then for the regular season was I had Minnesota at Chicago under at 43. And this got very close. Final score Minnesota 29, Bears 13 to end at 42, the razor thin margin of the 1 point.
And
all that matters to keep that bet is to stay within that.
that 1 point is what gave you the victory on the season in our bet. Do you have the finals? I finished at even 500.
27 and 27 for the
27
season.
and 27. So a coin is no better than Dr. Michael Werman at predicting football results.
Maybe we should do. You should do. In the next week, go ahead and assign a coin sides and see how the coin does with the same picks that you made. And see if you would have beaten the coin.
we can do that maybe for maybe for like Super Bowl bets. We could have a coin, like we can do props and stuff like that. What
sure.
The coin? Yeah.
Oh, you can bet on the coin toss.
Yeah, we can bet on the coin toss. Yeah. And we could bet. We could flip our coin to see and to determine our coin toss bet.
Yes.
And if you wanted the heads to mean tails, you could have it mean tails or heads.
Yeah.
I don't want to confuse things, but you were 27, 26, and 1. So
it would be if the coin on one of the tosses landed on the side
on its edge,
and it didn't land heads or tails. And so that was the difference between us over the course of this entire NFL season, where we bet 3 picks every week for the whole 18-week season, and it came down to that 1 point or that one push, however you want to look at it.
Either way, it was 1 point that I guess it would be 2 points that would have sent me to victory. 1 point would have been another push, and that would have been a tie for either of us. Either in the like if your push had been a loss by 1 point, we'd be tied. Or if you had 1 point difference in your last game, you would have had 2 pushes, and you would have been 26. I guess you would technically be up in the money, but you're.
Yeah, well, I guess if a win turned into a push,
you'd be 26.
Then we would have been
26, 26, and 2. So you would have been even.
We would have both been even at $0 earned.
So I just needed 2 points in one game on one of those, and I would have, 1 point in one of those games I wouldn't have lost, and 2 points I would have.
Right.
So it was razor thin, just like the margins in a lot of these NFL games, and that's why it's so hard to bet on those. But we're not we're not licking our wounds and just counting and just grateful that we didn't lose money. We're still gonna bet more.
We're not in that pro level of betting, I don't think yet. We wouldn't be considered.
No, we would just we just need a few here and there, because you need I think 54% is what you need to make money, and so we're at 50%, so it's only 4% off. We are losing a little bit of money, but we're not hemorrhaging money at least.
So you ended up totally flat, $0 earned, $0 lost. That was a $100 gain for me. But I guess if we did include the big with 54 bets, that would have been $540 if it's 10%. So it would have been down like $440.
I would have been up $540, over 18 weeks, that would be $30 a week. So not too bad. But maybe it's 30 bucks.
I do think probably the more important part of it is that we were quite down early in the season, and we'd worked our way back to even. So I think if we started at the bottom point, I think we were both making money since then anyway.
Those early week games are harder to
predict,
gauge, and also this week 18 is hard to gauge too, because it's hard to know who's going to be playing and who's not going to be playing, and who's playing for something and who's playing for nothing, and it's just one of those things. So I was fortunate, I think, that I finished 2-2, because it was Yeah, just yeah, it's hard to predict any of those games. So
Yeah.
I think the playoffs are also going to be difficult for us, but we've decided to make an additional 3 bets this week each.
Yeah. I would say maybe I had the slight edge after last week's, and I rolled into the final with the Andy Reid gentlemanly finish, also going 2-2. Just
Yeah,
to
you didn't need to show me up. Yeah,
I won by as little as possible. Right.
won by as little as possible.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you took a kneel down at the end there.
Right. With like 5 minutes to go, and I was like, that's fine. Yeah, that's it.
You encouraged the Vikings not to score any more points too.
Right. I have a guy.
I
made a
guess.
phone call. You know.
You just say nobody gets hurt. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this will conclude, I think, our phase 1 of this. And now we're gonna call that done. And now I think we're gonna restart it. Playoffs through the Super Bowl will be our phase 2.
Okay. So we have 3 weeks of conference playoff action,
and
then the Super Bowl. So 4 more weeks of betting. I think our first 2 weeks are going to be our convention, like played like the regular season, and then we're going to change things up a little bit for conference championship weekend and Super Bowl.
Then change it up a lot for the Super Bowl, I think. So I think we'll make a lot of picks in the Super Bowl. So we'll have a lot. They won't be quite as many picks, I think, over the course of our phase 2 here. But as we had at least in the regular season, but we'll have plenty. And then maybe we'll pick up maybe the NCAA tournament, maybe the next big betting opportunity maybe for us after we get through the NFL playoffs. Maybe
we could do that. I think that sounds fun.
We haven't done much basketball yet, so maybe we'll have to.
I'll have to start paying attention to college basketball.
Yeah.
So the playoff matchups are set. The Chiefs made the number 1 seed in the AFC. The Bills are number 2, and if the Chiefs and Bills each make the AFC Championship game, the NFL decided that the AFC Championship game would be played at a neutral site and not in Kansas City. What are your thoughts on that?
Probably the most surprising part of it was the length of time that the NFL took to get to this decision. I think that the decision itself is okay. I would really be disappointed to see the Chiefs not be able to host their 5th consecutive AFC Championship game. If it happens to be against Buffalo, I think it would be disappointing to see them lose that streak, even though they would have, they had the 1 seed, but they wouldn't necessarily get to host the AFC Championship game should it be against Buffalo. If Buffalo doesn't make it to the AFC Championship game and the Chiefs do, they would still continue that streak. But I think it's really the only thing the NFL could do without playing the rest of that game out.
I think,
then inconveniencing all of the playoff teams by pushing everything back a week. And I don't think
they should have played that game on Tuesday or Wednesday. And I think Buffalo really, when they left town, that should have been seen as a forfeit. And even though it's a bad way, but I think they would have lost the game anyway. And still you could say whatever. I think if they had lost, I think the reason they didn't want to lose the game is because they would have lost the tiebreaker to Cincinnati had they lost, and then they would only have 1 game at home, and Cincinnati would have the home field advantage again for the 2-3 game. So I am not as happy about it. I think also it hurts Chiefs ticket holders because they would have had 2 chances, 2 playoff games, and or possibility of two home playoff games. And the Chiefs, ended up losing.
Well, they still may have that as long as Buffalo doesn't make it to that game.
Yeah. Well, Buffalo gets even if Buffalo still gets 2 home playoff games if they win, no matter what. Had they been the 1 seed, they also would have gotten 2 playoff games. So they don't lose a playoff game.
Right.
They actually, it's possible they can have 3 home playoff games where the Chiefs, it seems like they can. Their maximum is is going to be 2 and possibly only 1. So
Maybe
I
only
just
one, yeah.
I think it's really a shame what happened, but
Mhm.
I think just placating the Bills is what happened, and I think the Bengals got screwed over because they didn't get a chance to use that tiebreaker over the Bills, but the Bills got a chance to use their tiebreaker over the Chiefs, or at least
Mhm.
even it. I think the Bengals, if the Bengals and Bills play each other, that game should also be a neutral site or a coin flip determination.
It should be, yeah.
But yeah, Cincinnati was. I think Cincinnati, if they could play it all over again, they probably would not have agreed to suspend the game for as long as they did, because they ended up really losing out because of it.
Yeah.
Because it's something that didn't happen to their team, it happened to some of the other team. And if something bad happens to another team, you'd think, well, it's the other team that's gonna, like, if you know, I am very happy that Hamlin was doing a lot better, and it was turned out to be good. But it was something that I don't know. It's one of those things, I guess. I disagree with the NFL's decision, but yeah, like you said, it might not even matter.
I think the NFL's somewhat, hoping that the decision doesn't have an effect, because they would, prefer to have play out the way that the games traditionally play out, especially, in the home field of the team that has the higher
Yeah, I
seed.
would have, like, if Buffalo had won against Cincinnati and they would have 14-3, I would have been, the Chiefs would go to Buffalo. That would be fine. I
Yeah.
just think the way it ended up, it seems like only Buffalo was given extra consideration. I
Mhm.
guess you could say the Chiefs automatically got the 1 seed, but that's how the
Yeah.
rules were written. They had more wins and a better winning percentage. So it's hard to
Right.
it's just hard. But so the Chiefs 1, Buffalo 2, Cincinnati 3. Jacksonville gets the 4th seed, winning the AFC South. Chargers 5th, Ravens 6th, and the Dolphins sneak in as the 7th seed. Um, the in the NFC, you want to talk about the NFC
Sure.
here?
Oh, do you want me to talk about the
Yeah,
NFC?
yeah.
I can, I guess, sure. Well, yeah. So, Eagles managed to bring Hurts back, and performed at least well enough to hold on and win their game, and they took the 1 seed, in the NFC, and also, which means they held out their division rival Cowboys, back into the
They could have
5
lost and
seed.
still won that. It won the division. It turns out. Yeah, yeah. Would they have? I think they would have lost the home field had they lost, though, right? They would, because San Francisco
San Francisco
won.
would have taken the 1.
Won,
Right, right,
I
right.
think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. So yeah, San Francisco finished in the 2 seed then. Minnesota 3rd, even though they may be paper tigers to some
Yeah, the third.
extent.
Yeah, so the top
Uh,
3. Yeah, 14-3 Eagles, and 13-4 49ers, and 13-4 uh, Minnesota.
Vikings, despite their -3 point differential for the season.
That's which
Um,
they almost got back to even with that Bears win. And if they had gotten back to even, I would have won the betting.
right. Yeah, then Tampa won the NFC South, with a losing record then, because they
8-9
dropped their final game of the season.
to the Falcons. Yep.
In when I'm not playing most of their starters
Yeah.
more than about the second half of the second quarter, I think is when
Yeah, I think they wanted
most of their
Brady to
starters.
break the completions record in a
Mm,
season. I think he had set last year. He has the most completions, I believe.
yeah,
Um,
in the history.
yeah, maybe. Yeah, Tom Brady in 2021 set an NFL season record with 485 completions in 2021. That was the year. That was the year Tampa won the Super Bowl. And in this year, 2022. No, wait, that was was last year. That would have been last year, the year after they won the Super Bowl, and they lost to the Ravens in the playoffs. And this year, because it was a 17-game season, so that's why he had 485.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady ended up with 490 completions
Really?
this year because he played the first bit. I think he only needed like 10 or 15 completions. So he
Wow.
set the completion record. He also set the attempts record this year as well.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't a great year for Tampa or Brady. But it was enough to get into the playoffs, winning their division, with an 8-9 record, which means they get a home game then too, with a losing record, which is kind of surprising
against Dallas. We'll talk about that. One more thing about the pass attempts record.
Mm-hmm.
4 out of the top 5 pass attempts seasons have been in 17-game seasons. Tom Brady has 3 of those top 5. Who is the fourth? Who's the quarterback who has the most pass attempts? Wait, that can't be right.
I mean, I think it'd be somebody that throws a lot. Maybe Favre. His gunslinger, but that seems like a lot though. Man, I don't know. I'll say Favre.
Top 4 is Matthew Stafford is number 2.
Really?
727 in 2012. Tom Brady is from 2021 is 3rd. Justin Herbert is the other one from this year, 699. Turns out Drew Bledsoe is number 5 in passing attempts per season.
The prototype for Brady.
Yeah. Matthew Stafford's season. It was a 2012 Detroit season. He had a 79.8 quarterback rating when he threw for 727 passes. Drew Bledsoe had an even lower quarterback rating in 1994, 73.6 when he threw that many passes. So that's
wow. So it's really just making it up in volume for not being able to have that high of a rating, at least anyway.
Yeah, there have been only 3 quarterbacks in the top 15 to have an over 100 quarterback rating, throwing for the top 15 in pass attempts. That was Tom Brady last year. He had 102.1 rating, he's the number 3. Drew Brees in 2016 had a 101.7, and as tied for 14th was Peyton Manning's career year 2013 when he had 55 touchdown passes. He had 115.1 rating. He was had that high in attempts. Mahomes is his highest is 23rd, and that was this year, all time in pass attempts per season. If that is interesting.
And he had an outside chance of getting to the passing yardage record.
Yeah, if he had 400 yards, I think in that game he would have.
His last couple games weren't as productive.
No,
as he would needed to be, at least anyway.
Yeah, Seattle. Yeah, neither Seattle nor Oakland. He ended not having to be. Okay.
Broncos and Raiders the last 2 weeks. Yeah.
Oh, Broncos. Yeah, Broncos and Seattle was 3 weeks. So yeah, similar.
Yeah. So Dallas ended up 12-5 with the 5 seed. Giants slotted in at 6th, and the Seahawks pulled in to the 7th seed at the last game of the season.
We I guess it wasn't barely, but we missed out on what we wanted as the chaos for the 7th seed was if because it went to overtime for Seattle. They had missed a field. They had missed a field goal at the end of regulation to send it to overtime, and then it was 13-13, and then they ended up making a field goal to win 16-13. But if they had not made a field goal and they would have tied, they would have finished 8-8-1.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Washington Commanders also finished 8-8-1.
Mm-hmm.
And then if Green Bay and Detroit tied, there would have been a 4-way 8-8-1 tie for the number 7 seed, but it didn't happen. So
But Detroit had to go and get that touchdown in the fourth quarter instead of kicking a field
and
goal.
Detroit would have, I think, when we determined our tiebreaker, Detroit would have been the playoff 7th seed if all 4 of them had been 8-8 and 1.
Correct. Yes. because their conference record was
That's
one game better than all of the other teams.
Yeah, that's interesting because so if both teams had tied,
yes,
they would have gotten in, but because both teams won, they didn't get in.
But again, that's unfortunate. Why those games weren't played simultaneously.
Yeah.
To where you don't already know the outcome of the game and know that possibility isn't really there.
Yeah, I want to
So
see.
it's unfortunate that the league didn't schedule them to be simultaneously.
I've become a person who likes ties, at least not when the Chiefs aren't playing. I think ties, because they mess up all this seating and stuff.
I think really we intend to root for chaos. You root for ties. I root for safeties. Yeah.
Yes.
I guess I get a little more. A little more. A few more safeties happen than ties typically. So
you're right.
Maybe I end up being happier slightly more often than you with those kinds of what you look for.
Yeah, I don't mind the safety either, but both I don't know if you think do you think any of the playoff games this week will have a safety? If I put it at a I'll put it as over under 0.5
1/2.
safeties.
I would take the
weekend.
over. I'm always rooting for them. I think there's a chance that somebody would. Yeah, there's probably, an average of one every probably 3 weeks or so. So there's a puncher's chance, right?
I'm gonna look it up if we can bet if somebody could bet.
Maybe we'll have to have that in the Super Bowl. Well, one of the prop bets can be safety.
Yeah,
it surely will be on the list of possible bets.
Yes.
Should we go ahead and run through our picks for this week's playoff games?
Yeah.
Looks like we both have a pick in the very first game of the playoffs, so it apparently is going to be an important game for us and also for the Seahawks and 49ers. They've already played twice this season. How did that come out? Was it 49ers won them both, right?
49ers won them both. They won 27-7 in week 2, I believe. That was the week that Trey Lance got hurt and Garoppolo finished. And then they played again more recently, and I think it was 21-13 that they won by the Niners won by 8 in Seattle. I can't remember the exact score. I want to say 21-13.
Was that with Purdy?
It was 21-13. That was with Purdy. That was his second start, I believe. It was the game after they played the Buccaneers. So he had his second start because he had I think Garoppolo got hurt in the Dolphins game, and then Purdy played against Brady and the Buccaneers, and then went to Seattle 21-13. That was the only game in the last 7 games that the 49ers failed to score 30 points or more.
Interesting.
So so what are you looking at in that game as a
so the game has so San Francisco is favored by 10 at home. Over under number is at 43. Like I do think San Francisco will win. I'm not confident that they'll cover the 10-point spread. They probably will, but I'm not sure about that. But I do think both teams are going to have to be scoring in this one too. So I'm going to take the over 43. for this game.
Over 43. Even though they won the first one 27-7, that was 30 with 34 total, and then second
under.
one was also 34, 21-13, so 34. But as I just mentioned, the 49ers have scored over 37, 6 of the last 7 games, so they maybe they'll, and it's in San Francisco, so their offense is better now under Purdy than it really ever was under Garoppolo. I don't know if that's because of Garoppolo versus Purdy or just because Christian McCaffrey has been integrated in the offense so well.
I think part
and George Kittle.
And they just got Debo Samuel back last week too. And I think they may have gotten him incorporated a little bit more into the offense too. So.
And that's one reason also I like that game, and I like San Francisco at -10. That's a big. I think that's the biggest spread right now of the week for the weekend. But I think San Francisco will win that game handily. So I like, even though it's a big number, I like the Seahawks. I like the 49ers -10 there.
So actually have a pick in the next game then, also on Saturday night game on NBC. This is Chargers at Jaguars. When we were looking at it earlier, just a little while ago, was even, and now the Chargers are favored by 1 point from when refresh the screen here, Mike.
Ooh, the Chargers are favored by 1?
Now the Chargers are favored by 1 point on the road.
It was a pick just an hour ago.
Yeah, so I had them. I had Jacksonville at a pick. I like the bet even better. Chargers -1. Although it actually makes really no difference.
You could get a push. You could get a push if the Chargers won by 1.
Yeah, that's
there's no tie as possible in the playoffs. You could get a push if the Chargers win by 1 point.
Right.
So it's slightly better.
It's slightly better. It is before we finish talking about this segment. So I'm going to take this -1.
Nice.
As a slight benefit. Make a little update here.
I'm going to check my. Let's check the most recent. My second game also might change.
It looks like it's the same.
Who's playing? And that was my second bet was Miami and Buffalo, another 2-7. Buffalo's favored by 9.5. It was 10.5. It's dropped because there are rumors that maybe Tua will play, and I think if Tua plays, that number might drop down to 6, maybe even something like that. I wouldn't be surprised because both of the Dolphins games against the Bills when Tua's played have been close, and the Dolphins even won one of those games. So if Tua comes back, even if he doesn't, I think the Dolphins can keep it close. I don't know if the Bills are, this might be a game where they rest some players because they're going to play next week. And also they were on a big emotional high last week. Maybe they aren't going to be quite as high this week. So it's a lot of points. And I don't feel as confident about the Bills with that number over the Dolphins. I think Dolphins are also better than the Seahawks are. When they're healthy. So I like San Francisco in that spot as nearly 10-point favorites, better than Buffalo. Even though maybe the weather also is cold, but I don't think it's supposed to be a huge factor. So
super cold or super snowy. I don't think it's the forecast at least.
Yeah. So I think the Bills. It might be a low-scoring game. It's cold and outdoors, so maybe just a low-scoring game. Will keep it fairly close. So I like Miami.
You're not, and you don't need them to win. You just need them to.
I just need them to cover.
Lose by 9 or less.
By less than double digits. So, yeah, I'll take that. Those are both. Yeah, I feel. I didn't like really any of the lines this week. It was tough, and we had fewer games to pick from. And it seems like more recently I've taken a lot of the bad games between the bad teams and bet on those. To try to but yeah, so
these games seem like they are a little bit more unpredictable, possibly, especially with some teams like not performing well in the last week of the season, like Dallas.
Yeah.
And then there's this Minnesota New York Giants game too, where both teams have pretty decent records, but I don't know that anyone's really confident in either team's ability.
Yeah, I was thinking of that one. I had bet that game a couple of weeks ago when the Vikings were favored by 3.5 points, and they ended up winning by 3 points. That was another one of my, if 1 point, 1 point there would have sent me to victory. So this was our season long total was it was that close,
Razor thin.
razor thin. So yeah, what was your was your second bet that you made this week?
Well, the second bet was the Jacksonville.
Oh, Jacksonville. That was your second bet. Okay, what's your number three?
Bet, final bet of this round. I am going to that Giants Vikings game, but not because I think either team is, maybe even capable of winning. But I just think that the over-under number is higher than what I would have expected, 48.5 for that one. Neither team's defenses are that great. I think both are in the lower half of the league for scoring allowed, but their offenses aren't that great either. So I'm not sure how they're going to get up to that 48.5 point total.
Minnesota has a good offense if Jefferson is playing well.
Most of the time their offense has been good is when their defense has been bad. Then they've scored a lot to come back to win late. But
48.5 is a high number.
It's a bit high. I'm surprised that it's higher than the Dolphins Bills over under, or even the 49ers Seahawks game too is only at 43. So yeah, I'm going to take the under in the Giants Vikings game.
Yeah. Okay. I'm staying away from that game. Although I do want to toot my own horn, saying that I was one of the probably earliest prognosticators to predict the Giants as a playoff team, and I think I was as early as week 3 that I had seen a route forward for the Giants in the UFC as a playoff team. I think they were 2-0 after week 2, and so I thought they had a chance of making the playoffs. And I called it. So
you called it early,
but I'm still not going to bet on them.
But you're not betting.
Or I've been burned too many times by the Vikings. I think the Vikings will win that game, but I could see the Giants blowing them out easily. I could also see the Vikings winning a close game, which is probably what's going to happen. But
even if the Giants do blow them out, if it's as long as it's in the 42-3 ish, somewhere in there, it still keeps it.
You'll be fine, comfortably under.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about your final pick for this week?
Mine final pick is one that involves the Dallas Cowboys and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 4-5 matchup
on Monday night.
Monday night, the last game of wildcard weekend. Tampa is 2.5 point underdogs to Dallas playing in Tampa. Dallas is a better team, you would think, but Prescott has been playing poorly. Who knows what's going on with the Cowboys? They tend to fold in the playoffs. The Buccaneers do not usually do that, at least not since Tom Brady has been around. So I don't think Brady doesn't tend to lose first round playoff matchups. I don't know when the last time Brady lost.
The Bucs haven't played great the last several weeks, but they have won when it matters. They've won. They ended up winning the division.
Yeah. Oh, the last
by beating a division opponent, and then yeah.
Oh, 2019, the last year that Brady was in New England, they lost the wild card to the Titans, and that was the year that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and the Patriots were the number 1 seed that year, and the Titans beat them, so the Chiefs got home field advantage because of that. So, so I guess Brady does lose first round playoff games sometimes, but I still think Dallas's mojo is not in a good spot right now. So I'm going Tampa Bay plus 2.5 on that one. So that's, and my thinking is also that if Dallas loses, Mike McCarthy is gone as Dallas head coach, and probably Sean Payton will take that job over any of the other current jobs out there. He's the hot commodity, I think. Which job that's open right now is the best one, do you think, in terms of because it seems like Sean McVay is leaving Los Angeles.
But it's at least he's
well,
apparently taking some time to weigh.
think about it. Cliff Kingsbury has already been fired.
Because he's he's gonna have, that team's gonna have some difficulties in the next several years.
They don't have any draft picks.
They're
Stafford's been hurt.
They're apparently injured and aging quarterback. They've got some other options at quarterback, but that are also not necessarily that great. So it's gonna be a tough ride for the next several years there. I could see him retiring briefly, going to TV for a couple years to ride out that contract, and then maybe coming back there or somewhere else afterwards. Maybe that's a possibility. He's not very old. He's only 36.
37, I think, maybe. Yeah, he's young. Yeah, and I guess there's Phoenix or Arizona.
That's probably maybe the worst of the jobs available, possibly, because they don't.
Because
they're tied into Kyler Murray. They don't really have.
Is that worse than being stuck with Russell Wilson and no draft picks?
That one's pretty tough too. Yeah. So, yeah, but Arizona, it's like, I don't know. I think they've got some weird ownership issues too, and yeah, there's a lot going. There's a lot of negatives in Arizona. Maybe you could say like, well, I mean, at least you have a relatively healthy quarterback in Denver, where he should be better than the season that they had. And maybe it was all, Nathaniel Hackett's doing that caused the problem. They played better the last 2 weeks of the season after he was fired. So maybe it's a slightly better job than Arizona, but maybe not. Houston should be a decent place because they have a lot of draft capital coming up in the next few years, but it's still Houston, and it's like
they fired 2 coaches after 1 year consecutive, two in a row, and it's going to be Josh McCown or Cade McNown. Do you remember which one it's going to be? Even
Josh McNown.
Josh McCown.
Oh,
they're the same. They're the same person. Indianapolis also has an opening. If Jeff Saturday's not going to be kept around. Carolina, maybe. It seems like maybe Steve Wilkes has kept that job as a different, which is probably bad long term, but maybe okay short term. Defensive minded coaches in today's NFL tend not to be as successful as offensive coaches. So, and
Harbaugh is a potential spot for one of those jobs.
I think he's asked or interviewed or something with the Panthers. He was also a candidate for Minnesota's job last year. It seems like he wants to get out of college. I think Michigan has a few NCAA violations maybe on their way too. So I don't know which job I'd pick. It seems like, I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe the Rams, just because it's in Los Angeles, and if that opens up, that's
maybe Stafford is healthy. I think realistically, if you're truly a good coach, you'd want to go to the place that gives you the most options. You can make the biggest impact in the first year, and it has to be Houston, though. It seems to me that's because they have so much draft capital, coming in here. Because they get Cleveland's first round pick this year and next. And Cleveland did not play terribly well this season, so their picks are actually relatively high. They'll be picking 2nd and 12th, 10th or 12th, somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
If they can get the right coach and the right, GM, in there with them, they have an opportunity to at least make a big impact through the draft right away, but they have not done that, and it sounds like they're already making a mistake. They truly are going to go down this route with an inexperienced coach who used to be a middling quarterback and a journeyman quarterback.
I guess it's usually the journeyman players that make better coaches anyway, because they can coach people, because if you're a really good player, you don't maybe understand how you got to be really good. And
Yeah.
but if you're kind of maximizing your mediocre abilities and made it to the top level, you could maybe help other people do it. It seems like I don't who's the best. I don't know who the best player in the best player has been in the NFL. Jim Harbaugh, maybe he was a mediocre quarterback. I don't. In
Mhm.
college, maybe it's Deion Sanders now. Since he's done pretty well with at least at University of Colorado now. But
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather see somebody pick Dion to be an NFL coach over McCown. I mean, come on.
I think Eric Bieniemy probably should be the pick somewhere.
Yeah.
He was a pretty good NFL, pretty good player.
Mhm.
Though it's hard. Like, most of the coaches are backups or they never played. I don't.
For um for the quarterbacks at least anyway, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and most of the other.
Well, it's a lot of linemen and like offensive linemen, I think maybe end
Yeah,
up being
Vrabel was a solid
coaching.
player.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's hard to. Yeah, in other sports, sometimes it's those like it's soccer or in basketball. Sometimes the stars are good managers. Baseball, it's usually good kind of mediocre catchers that become the good managers.
Right.
You have some exceptions like Don Mattingly was a manager and people like that, but it's not usually the great
Yeah. Well,
players.
yeah, I mean the top tier players would have made enough money. They don't need to
It's true.
continue to be associated with it. So I think they probably would, they're probably, had the opportunity to have some pretty good coaches that just never went into it because they've already been paid enough. They don't need all that stress still to go back into that after, finishing
Yeah,
their careers.
yeah. I guess Buddy Bell, Dusty Baker, they were pretty good players.
Yeah.
Um,
Frank Robinson.
Frank Robinson, yeah, Frank Robinson's probably the best who's been a success. Ted Williams was a manager for a while. I don't think he had that much success. But yeah, Frank Robinson had a lot of
Pete
success.
Rose.
Yeah, Pete Rose. Guess so. Yeah, Lupinella was a decent player.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some Joe Girardi. He played Aaron Boone. They got some uh, decent players, but
Yeah.
stars make too much money and they don't need to.
Yeah, they wouldn't. I don't think they just wouldn't want to do it
Yeah,
because the money wouldn't be what they're used to getting paid for what they were doing before.
yeah. So yeah, I guess Houston. You think back to Houston. You think Houston's most? I think in theory Houston's the most attractive because it seems like they have the most probably cap space and
In
draft
theory,
capital. In theory, but
they're gonna screw it up. I
they're not
guarantee
an
they're gonna screw it
attractive
up.
destination for free agents. It doesn't seem like
No.
because there's have been so little success. Other than like Deshaun Watson, like you want to stay away from that. And the quarterbacks, I don't think the draft looked that great. There's big kind of caveats with all of them,
Yeah.
and it's you want to. I think I would rather be getting a free agent quarterback than one in the draft this year. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Bryce Young,
You don't think Houston's
CJ Stroud.
you think Davis Mills or Jeff Driscoll are the future of the Texans?
I think Josh McCown might be the future as player coach, like Pete Rose once was
Yeah.
player manager.
You don't know that's not an option for them right now, Mike. That
Yeah,
they may be considering that. You don't know. You just don't know. And I think some of the like I think Brandon Cooks has already talked about wanting to not be around for a rebuild with Houston. So it's not going to be easy, whoever they bring in, but it seems like it should, in theory, be a promising place to go for a coach. But if they're looking at where you've heard that they're looking, I don't see how it plays out well.
Yeah. The last trying to see the last head coach who was a player coach in the NFL. There were a couple in the 20s. Curly Lambeau was probably the most famous. The last player who played and was also on the coaching staff, interesting enough, was Dan Reeves, who coached the Denver Broncos and the Falcons to Super Bowl losses. He was on Tom Landry's staff on the Cowboys in the early 70s. And interesting enough, Tom Landry himself was a defensive back and defensive coordinator for the New York Giants in the 1950s at the same time. So he was related to this. Anyway, player coach, if it comes up. But I don't think that will happen. I think what will happen, though, is that we'll be back next week with even more exciting NFL action, and we'll see how our picks do in our playoff, in our new playoff race for our betting crown. First regular season was very, very close. I don't think it would take a tie to be any closer in the playoffs. So we'll see what happens with that. But do you have any further final thoughts, Andrew?
No, that covers it.
All right. On that note, welcome to the playoffs. Enjoy wild card weekend, and I hope your teams do well, or at least do well resting, like the Eagles and the Chiefs. And we'll see you back again next week for another exciting Warning Track Power Hour. Until then, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our many deliverance vehicles, and we'll see you next week. Have a good day.